Well, I've looked forward to what I'm going to do tonight for several weeks now, since I've been back a couple of weeks. And I didn't want to wait too long to give this report because a lot of things kind of slip your mind. And as several of you reminded me, as you get older, that gets worse. So I figured the quicker I can get this done, the better. Not to just try to get it done, but because it is sometimes a little harder to remember some things. But I appreciate your interest. Several of you, many of you rather, have asked me about this trip, and I've kind of said, well, I'll just give the report and share that with you as much as I can and much as I feel like it would be good. And you said that'll be fine. So I appreciate you coming and being here tonight and wanting to know more about this. I want to say a couple of things before I begin this. I want to say something about Jackson. As was mentioned this morning, Bobby mentioned that he and Taylor and Rebecca are all leaving, and certainly that's the case, and we'll miss them. They've meant so much to us. The girls have certainly to our family as well. Jackson has meant a great deal to me. I can't tell you how much Jackson's meant to me because he's helped me in numbers of ways. Jackson is, how old are you? 18. I didn't want to get it exactly right, but you know, 18-year-old that knows as much as Jackson does can help a 58-year-old that knows as little as I do, especially about a lot of things. And he has done that. And I have called on him many times over the past 3 years since I have been here. And I want to say publicly, I think it would be the right thing for me to do, to say publicly how much I appreciate what he has done for me. We're going to miss him as we're going to miss these others. But Jackson does a lot for all of us that we're probably not even as aware of, just in terms of some things that he's capable of doing. I so very much appreciate him. As I do all of our young people, their faith, their interest in spiritual things. And we will miss all of them a great deal. But we wish them Godspeed, certainly, and that things will go well for them. Well, I mentioned this passage this morning from Philippians 1. I'm not going to take the time to read it again, but I do want to call your attention to two phrases in this passage that we read this morning from Philippians 1, where Paul is stating to these Philippian brethren the value that he saw in them, not just to help him, but to help the cause of Christ. He would say in verse 5, for your fellowship in the gospel, and then the latter part he says, you all are partakers with me of grace. The concept of having fellowship in the Bible is all about the spiritual fellowship that we have. We sometimes talk about we'll share a meal together and we'll have fellowship or being together. Nothing wrong with that phraseology. I think that's what fellowship is. But that's not, in essence, what biblical fellowship is. Biblical fellowship, as it's used mainly in Scripture, has to do with the things that we share in the gospel. And Paul would talk about that to these Philippian brethren. He says, for your fellowship in the gospel, and for you all are partakers with me of grace. In chapter 4, he says this, beginning in verse 10. And I want you just to think about this in reference to him saying this to a group of people who have made a difference in his life and made a difference for the gospel's sake. Listen to this. But I rejoiced in the Lord greatly that now at last your care for me has flourished again. Though you surely did care, but you lacked opportunity. Not that I speak in regard to need, for I have learned in whatever state I am in to be content. I know how to be abased and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I have learned both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Nevertheless, you have done well that you shared in my distress. Now you Philippians know also that in the beginning of the gospel, when I departed from Macedonia, no church shared with me concerning giving and receiving, but you only. For even in Thessalonica you sent aid once and again for my necessities. Not that I seek the gift, but I seek the fruit that abounds to your account. Indeed, I have all and abound. I am full, having received from Epaphroditus the things sent from you, a sweet-smelling aroma, an acceptable sacrifice, well-pleasing to God. And my God shall supply all your need according to His riches in glory by Christ Jesus. Now to our God and Father be glory forever and ever. Amen. I remember during our lectureship when Brother Earnhardt was here talking about the book of Philippians, he referenced this passage particularly in chapter 4 where Paul would say, I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me. And his point was, and I think it's a great point, and so many people need to understand this, Paul's not saying that I can do everything. He's saying in the context that I have learned in my situation that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Whatever my circumstances, I can accomplish what it is that God wants if my mind is set to accomplish that. But in the context, what Paul is saying is is that these Philippian brethren had seen to his needs multiple times. They had come to his aid multiple times. And it's not to suggest that he wasn't favorable toward that, because he wanted that. He needed that. He was thankful and appreciative for what they had done. But Paul says, regardless, I can accomplish what it is that I need to accomplish. But the fact that you've helped me meant so much to him. He mentions that in the first part of the chapter, or first part of the book. And he mentions that in the last part of the book as well. They were on his heart and they were on his mind. And I tell you that because you have shared with me. You continue to share with me in my work. And I must tell you that there are things about this work that I am seeking to do with the Lord's help in Costa Rica that it has been life-changing for me. I must share that with you. And I realize that when I say that, there are going to be some things that are hard for me to articulate about that. Because pictures and talking don't do this justice. What I'm about to show you are just pictures of people whom you've never met. But they're pictures of people and the relationships that I have obtained and I've built because of the Lord primarily. And there's no way for me to express that to you. I'm going to do my best to share it with you. And I hope in time that many of you would have an opportunity to meet these wonderful people. But I want to express again my appreciation for your willingness to help me go. Without you, as Paul would say, without you, I could not go. So I very much appreciate what you continue to do for me. This was my 8th trip, and this was my second trip with Jenny, my daughter. And I am grateful that she was able to go with me, and I'll talk to you more about that in a moment. But I have fallen in love with these people. I mentioned this the last time I gave a report here about my trip. Bob Owen told me several years ago, he said, it's changed your life, hasn't it? And I said, yes, it has, because I've now built the relationship with them. Frank and I were talking before we began tonight, and he's done some work overseas and in other places, and he said, you know, after about 3 visits, it's just a life changer for you. And I've now made 8, and it is a life changer for me. And I am hopeful that even tonight, while I give this, that there are some folks in Costa Rica watching this, and they're seeing it on live stream. And if they're not, we're going to make it available to them soon after the service is over on the archived sections of the website so that they can watch this. But I'm grateful to you because I have fallen in love with these people. And I hope and pray for all the right reasons. But I do appreciate the opportunity tonight to share this with you. Now, you notice I don't have any notes. I'm just going to kind of, I know Beth's going, please don't do this. I'm going to kind of go off the cuff here. But we'll be finished by 8:30 and we'll all be able to go on our way. I'm just kidding about that. Just kidding. But I do want to share this with you, and I want to just talk to you. Of course, Costa Rica is in Central America. To the northern, it's Nicaragua. To its south is Panama. The Pacific Ocean is on one side, and the Caribbean Sea is on the other. And I want to just share a few things with you. This is not, I found this in the World Book. You know, I mentioned that this morning. Not really. I found this on Google, but I wanted to at least show you again where it was. But I want to just mention in passing, I know this is not critical to but I just want to mention in passing a few quick facts about Costa Rica. It has about 4 million people. The life expectancy is about 79. It's one of the highest in the world. They have a democratic government. They, like us, elect a president every 4 years. There's no standing army. There has been no standing army in Costa Rica since 1948. That was when their civil war ended, and they don't have an army. I mean, it's just police. Now, there are police all over the place, but there's no army. And first time I got down there, I got a little nervous about that. You know, I'm not quite sure what's going on with all that. But anyway, they don't have a standing army. The average day laborer makes $10 a day. That's the highest in Central America. How about that? You willing to do that? Okay. I just want you to think about that. The diet staples are rice and beans, chicken, fruit, and bread, and I'm good with that. I can live with that a few days. I don't know if I want to do that for a year or so, but I'm good with that for a while. And most everywhere you go, even in a restaurant, those are the kind of things that you can order pretty quickly. They have a 96% literacy rate. You can get education down there fairly easy. There are usually no street names or addresses. One of the most amazing things is you get on a bus, you get on a van, you get in a taxi, and if you're not with somebody who can speak the language and knows where they're going, you're in big trouble. I'm in big trouble. But a lot of times they'll say, you know, go to this city, here's this landmark, there's probably a cow tied up under the tree, you turn left there and it's 3 houses on the right after you turn past the cow. That's kind of what you get, okay? And so there are times when I have trouble if I'm sending them something, if it's something that's not digital, there's some difficulty because there are no street names or addresses, at least not many that I could find. I thought this was interesting. The national anthem was played at 7 o'clock every morning on the radio. I just throw that out there. And then pedestrians are called targets, and I know exactly why that's the case. I know exactly why that's the case. Because I'm here breathing, and I feel fortunate every time I come back that I'm still alive. I will tell you that. Well, the three main areas of my work in Costa Rica are Alajuela, Liberia, and Alajuelita. And the Diaz's, Milton's here, but the Diaz's aren't here, and some of you who can speak Spanish, please don't get too serious about this. Patty's gone, which is a good thing, because if she heard me, she'd be correcting me in a nice kind of way, because she spent some time in Costa Rica. But these are the three places that I've been, and I want to kind of share with you what I did in these three places. I think that's the best thing maybe for me to do. So I want you to think about that with me. This is really a picture of, if you will, an image of Costa Rica. And there are several major cities that you see there. Alajuela is the one that's outlined in red there, and that's where kind of our headquarters is when we go. That's where the Christians whom we've met and whom we know the best are. And I want to just share some of them with you. This is the church in Alajuela. This is the outside of the building, of the place that they assemble. And it's on the top of a storefront down in the city. And I don't know if you can tell that, but you probably can't see that too, but that says Church of Christ on it right there, and they've had that sign for several years, but that's where they meet. This is Santiago Soto and his wife Maricela, and of course that's me. I think that's me from a prior trip, because my hair's not like that now. I don't know why I said that to you, but anyway, that's me from another trip. But anyway, he's the preacher there, and he's the one that I built this what I think is a great relationship with. And I am grateful to him for all he continues to do for me. He's kind of my go-to guy when I'm there, when I'm planning things. Santiago's kind of the man that worked with me on those kind of things. This is Maricela's father and mother. His name is Gerardo, and I don't remember what her mother's name is, but he's probably the oldest man in the congregation there. And they are hopeful that in time they can have elders there, and I hope that certainly is the case. And I've got this on, and I don't want it on. Is there a way to turn that off, Jackson? Do you know? Well, should have a pointer. Okay. See, what am I going to do when he leaves? This is going to be bad. Thank you. It's which one? Right there? Yeah. Okay. Okay. We'll just have to fly him up on the weekends. That's all I know to do. All right. This is Santiago's family. That's Santiago. This is his wife, Maricela, as I mentioned to you. This is their son, Josue, who's 21. This is their daughter, Abby, who I believe is 17. This is Santiago's brother, Marvin. And this is Eduardo, who is one of Josue's best friends. They're both 21. And Josue and Eduardo are my translators primarily. They're the ones that help me communicate down there. But this is kind of the family. And I Eduardo in this picture because he's like one of their own. He's always at their house, and he's always willing to help. Just wonderful people. All right. Well, I'm showing you this picture because obviously that's me. That's Jenny and my daughter, and that's me. But this couple is Selah Chavez and her daughter Veronica. Selah and Veronica and her husband Sergio were the people in Tampa who were converted several years ago. She and Sergio were just walking along the street, and one of our members just hollered at them from the street and said, "Hey, would you be interested in coming in worshiping with us?" And they said, "We can't now, but we're going to come Sunday." And they did. Walt got to study with them. They obeyed the gospel, and the rest is history. It's amazing what a conversation, a throw of a hand might do. But they were in Costa Rica while we were there this time, and they worshiped with us on Sunday morning, so it was a thrill for us to see them. This is the meeting place at Alajuela. That's me, of course, preaching there, and then that Josue is up there translating for me. And this is Eduardo. There's Eduardo, and this is Josue. Translators, and they do a great job. They not only can translate fairly well, I'd say very well, but they also have the sense of what I'm trying to say. They do that very well, so I'm grateful to them for the work that they do. And they're always willing to do whatever they can to help. This is just a picture that I think Jenny took, but this is I think after the class that morning, if I'm not mistaken, which I was able to teach as well. And of course, when I'm there, they want me to teach and preach as much as we can. So I appreciate that and just wanted to show that and share that with you. This was after services. This is what I look forward to as well, because Marcella, this was in her home. She was cooking rice. It was very good. And, as long as we got Diet Coke, I'm good to go. We've got rice and beans, and that's some chicken there. And so we enjoyed that. And that's just sitting in their home at their table. On Saturday, we got to meet with some of the men in their home. This is a gentleman named Ronaldo, or Ronald, it would be his English name. And that's Gerardo. That's Marcella's dad. That's, of course, Eduardo and Josue. And some of the other men are there. I'm going to show you a picture of them in just a moment. But every time I go, I meet with the men, particularly in Alajuela, so we can talk about the work. And again, the factor is there now, but because they trust me and I trust them, and we're talking about the work, and they're all about local autonomy. They understand that concept very well, but they want to know, they're just interested in some ways that maybe I can help them and think about some ways, about some things we can do to help them. So I always enjoy this session. Usually lasts 3 or 4 hours because, of course, the translation takes a little time, but they're always interested in talking about some things of that kind of nature. This is a picture of them all together. No, I think the only one that you've not met yet in pictures is Eddie. That's Eddie right there, and he does a good job. I'm not exactly sure, but Eddie and Ronaldo and Gerardo are all men, along with Santiago, are all men who I think are coming close to becoming shepherds of this church. And I'm anxious about that. I think that will be a great move for them if that can happen. That's not something that anybody's pushing, but it's something that they're talking about. It's something when I'm there, interested in talking, getting my ideas about what the Bible says about that. So I'm very interested in talking to them about that. But these men, I think, can accomplish a lot with the help of the Lord, obviously, and they're doing that even now. So that's what was going on there. The next place that we went was up in Liberia. It's in the northern part of the country. There are two primary airports in Costa Rica. One is in the San Jose area, where that's the capital. The other's in Liberia. And Kyle, and some of his flight that he does, and he flies into Liberia on several occasions, so he's familiar with that area. He's familiar with the airport, and Kyle's gone with me one other time, I think. Well, I know as well, so I appreciate what he's done. But we were able to go to Liberia. We were hoping to fly in Thursday and go directly to Liberia, spend Thursday night there, let me preach for the church there, talk to some of the members, and then come back Friday to come back to Alajuela Friday. But because the road was closed and because of the weather, we were unable to do that. We had some transportation issues as well, so we were not able to go. But for Monday morning we did. This is the van we took, obviously, and they're always interested in doing a little selfies. I bet we took 70 of those things before they quit taking them. Anyway, that's the van we were in, and this was the Pacific Ocean. We traveled up the highway. This was the Pacific on the way up. This was the Pacific on the way back. So rain came and bad weather came, but we made it up there and made it back fine. It was about a 4.5 to 5 hour drive one way, and so it was a long day. But we were able to do some good things while we were up there. This is the main reason we went. At least we were able to go on Friday. This is Donaldo and his wife Costa, their youngest son Sebastian, and this is a young man named Javid. If I'm pronouncing that correctly. Javid is a student at the university. He's studying to be a translator. He's a very good speaker of English as well. So when I was there, even though I had 3 translators while I was there, Josue, Eduardo, who had gone with us, and of course Javid, who was there. But what's interesting about him is he's very interested in preaching. He's very interested in wherever he ends up. Of course, he's getting his degree in translations. I don't know how many languages. I forgot how many languages he can. But he's learning more, and he wants to go wherever, in essence, the Lord takes him to accomplish some things that he's training himself to do. So wherever he ends up is going to be good for the Lord, I believe, because his heart's in the right place. He comes from a family of Christians, and I'm grateful that he's there. And he's not, maybe he stays in Costa Rica, but right now he's helping Donaldo, who's the preacher. He's helping this church in Liberia right now. I show you this picture because this was Sunday night before we left to come home on Monday. This is Anna and Donald. They are Donald and Costa's oldest children. both live in San Jose. And so they took the bus Sunday night after Jenny and I got back to the hotel. They took the bus and joined us for dinner that night. Wonderful, wonderful kids. I say kids. Anna's a nurse. They're a little bit older, I think, in their young 20s. And Donald is studying to be a doctor. So they're both very, very capable, very talented. But I wanted Jenny to meet them, and I think they wanted to meet her. They'd become Facebook friends, and I wanted to see them again because on an earlier trip, I just fell in love with those kids. Their faith was strong. They had energy. And I felt like, these are some kids who can really help the cause, and they're doing that now. So I appreciate them being able to meet us. This is back in Liberia. This is back where Donaldo and Costa live. This is their street, and I'm showing this to you for a particular reason in just a moment. I want to show it to you. But this is their street there in Liberia. This is the front of their house. This is the back of their house, and I don't know, maybe maybe there's not quite the contrast that I had hoped. When I look at it here, it's not quite the same up here, but maybe you can get an idea about that. This is the front part of their house, and in the back they have a room, and they're building another room, and this room is church assembles, okay, on the Lord's Day, and there's a room behind it that they're beginning to work on, and they're trying to build some bathrooms back there. Here's why. If they can build the bathrooms, the city of Liberia will let them put up a sign on that street that I just showed you that says the Church of Christ meets here. And that's what they're hoping to do. But right now, because the bathroom facilities are unfinished, they can't put that sign up. But I wanted to show you these pictures to give you some idea about that. This is a little bit further in. You can see that's, of course, I'm talking, you know who I am. That's me. That's Donaldo. That's Jenny. There's some other people here. You can't really see it real well, but that's where they meet. That's where they assemble. They just put up folding chairs, and they meet and assemble on the Lord's Day. This is just a little bit closer, and as you can see, that's Josue there. He's kind of the translator. Habib's a translator. Donaldo's talking. This is his wife, Costa, Jenny, and me. But we're just spending some time talking about the work there and what we can do to maybe help them. This is Habib and Costa and Jenny. These are some cards that some folks in Florida had made, and Costa had those. Some folks here, Debbie Black made some things that I took down there for some of the women down there, and they really appreciated those too. I didn't get a picture, and I intended to do that. But several people had sent some things, and so Costa was glad to get those. Just little cards that had some scriptures written on them to try to encourage them, so she appreciated those very much. Again, that's me just having a conversation. I feel pretty good about my ability. I have not learned the language, not necessarily intending to learn the language, but I am better able to communicate because I think they understand me better in my southern whatever I speak. They understand me, and I understand them a little bit more too. So that works out pretty well for all of us. This is the board. This is their PowerPoint. This is what Donaldo uses on the Lord's Day when he preaches. That's the board, and what that says is, as seeing the invisible, Hebrews 11, 24 through 27. Interesting, every week he sends me what he puts on that board. Now, I can't read it, but he sends it to me, okay? And I'm starting to figure out, I can figure out most of the scripture references, 2 Corinthians 4:16, and when I think about what the title is, I can figure out some of these because I know that those particular verses are talking about a particular thing. So I can follow pretty closely, and what I appreciate about that is he sends me what he's going to talk about and is interested in my thoughts about that. So I appreciate that very much. But that's what that is. Again, these are the areas back behind where they're trying to finish this, trying to put some bathrooms. I'll show you a picture of that in just a moment, a little bit better picture of that. But that's the room that they're trying to finish, and this is obviously the plumbing. Some of the plumbing is in, some of it isn't, but this is the bathroom, some of the bathroom areas, and they're trying to finish all of that. So that's what they're trying to do. And if they can do that, then the city's going to let them put up a sign. And Donaldo said, once we put up the sign and people know we're here, they know what we're doing, he feels like that'll be a great help to them. It'll attract people to what they're trying to do. So he's anxious to be able to finish that. Sebastian's raising his hand for some reason. I'm not sure exactly why, but this is just, we were at Pizza Hut, which they know if I'm over there that I like going to some of those Americanized places. So that's where we went for lunch that particular day. It's quite expensive, I might add. It was a little bit considerably more than I thought it was going to be on that day. But that's all the gang. This is the one in that picture you probably don't know. That's Danny. Danny is a cousin of Maricela, who's Santiago's wife, and he was our driver, the van. all of those kind of things, and we were able to pay him in order to take us up there. So he was a good man. This is coming home. We were tired. I just put that in because we were tired on the back seat, and Marvin, being the funny guy that he is, just took that picture of Jenny and me. But it was tiring. You can tell the lights in the back. But we're sleeping. As I said, it was about 5 hours back, and it was raining. Of just one of those nights that kind of puts you to sleep. And believe me, when you sleep on that road in that traffic, you're really tired. Just trust me, really tired. All right, and then I want to mention this place. This was a place we had never gone. This is a place called Alajuelita. It just sits south of San Jose, about 5 to 10 miles. This is where we were primarily, and we had been to Liberia. But on Sunday afternoon, we went to Alajuelita, and we stopped after services, after church that morning in Alajuela. We stopped at a mall, and they had a foosball table. So Abby and she challenged me to a foosball game, so we got to do a little bit of that. So we had a little fun that way too. But again, we were on our way to Alajuelita, and this was the drive. We had 11 in the van. You know, when you have 11 in a van that's supposed to hold 9, and I'm one of the 11, that makes for a pretty tight van. But I had a little room, so I appreciated that. But we were excited about going because we'd never been there. I did know the preachers there, whom you're going to see a picture of in just a moment. But this was the trip where we were headed to Alajuelita. This is when we arrived at the place where they meet. This is obviously these kids are playing soccer. It's Sunday afternoon. This is a city of, you can't really tell it real well, but this is the city, and back further over here on the wall, see where the pointer is, that's the city of San Jose. But Alajuelita is a village as well. It's fairly populated, but that's where we drove that day. That's where it was. This was the street that we drove up, parked our van right over here, but this was the street. And you can tell, it's not Florence, okay? You can tell. They're not accustomed to many of the things that we have. But they're some of the happiest on earth, and I'm grateful that I was able to go and spend some time with them. That's one of the members there. He's coming up. And I really appreciated these Christians there because they had already met that morning. And Zapata, who's the preacher there, and Victor, who also works there, asked the brethren, he said, would you all mind coming back that afternoon at 2 o'clock? And they said, we'd be happy to do that. So they were able to come back and meet with us. All right? This is the van that we were in. That's Santiago. That's Maricela, that's her father, but we were arriving. This is the building where they meet, okay? And that's the sign that tells what meets there. And this is Brother Zapata. He's waiting on us to get there, and we were anxious to get there. But again, I'm going to show you the sign. This is the sign, and the sign says, here it meets, the Church of Christ, Matthew 16:18. I had to look that up, but at least I thought that would impress you that I could get that much. But that's what you can probably imagine that's what that sign says. But this is where they meet, and as you go in the door, this is kind of what it looks like inside. Again, but it's their place. It's the place that they meet, and they're anxious about that. There are some things that they'd like to finish out if they could, but right now they just don't have the ability to do that. Some of the most wonderful people I'd met since I'd been down there. I meet Christians at several different places, and they're all wonderful. And that's what you would expect when the gospel has changed their lives and changed them. But this was just a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to meet these folks. This is kind of a picture of them from the front. There's some others on the side, but altogether they had between 30 and 40 people there that afternoon. So I was very appreciative of the fact that several had gathered to be there. This was, again, the meeting place. I'm speaking. Josue is translating for me, and I appreciate that, again, the job that he did very much. I preached a lesson on taking up your cross daily. I preached that lesson here, but it's been a year or so ago. But what was interesting to me, and several of you have asked, well, what do you preach? You preach what you preach here. You preach what the gospel is. You talk to them about the gospel. They understand the gospel like we understand the gospel. But it is a little harder to know what to preach. But every time I go, at least unless I'm asked to preach on a particular thing, or if we're in a study with people individually and we're studying a particular thing, what I try to preach about are things that will encourage them. They need encouragement. They need some exhortation. They need to be continue to be supported emotionally in the sense of sometimes it's a struggle for them to do what God wants them to do. It's a struggle to be just like it is here. And so I would just suggest that on this particular occasion I was talking about taking up your cross daily. And At the end of that, of course, my take on what that means is that God is asking us to be willing to die for Him. I believe that's what that's talking about. That may not be exclusively in all that He's talking about, but I believe when Jesus says that He's saying you need to be willing to die for me. And if you're willing to do that, then you will do these other things that I will expect of you. So when I was preaching and when I was talking about that, after it was over, I had one of the sisters come up to me and she said, "Would you do what you preach?" And I said, "I hope so." That's my hope and that's my prayer. So they listened very carefully. And I think this next slide shows that. This was a lady who was sitting as I was preaching, and she had her hand in several passages. I don't know if you can see her fingers, but she's trying to follow along. Every time I mentioned a passage, she would turn there and she would hold her place there. And I mean, the whole time I was speaking, I don't know that she ever looked up, but she was on top of it in terms of trying to keep up with where I was going. And I tried to be fairly minimal in all the places that I wanted her to look at. But I appreciated her, and after it was over, we exchanged some greetings and just exchanged some conversation, and I very much appreciated what she had to say. But again, just like here, when you preach, there are people that are right with you. There are people that are right on top of it. Occasionally there's some people that may not be right with you, but that's what it is down there. So nothing had changed. I thought this was impressive, and I just showed you this picture because most of them were like that. They were interested in what we were talking about. There you see the lady. There's the lady, and there are a couple of younger people. I think we may be finished back here. So the kids were walking around, but there were a lot of younger people and even young children. There were several here, several in all of these places, which I appreciated. Several teenagers, but several different age groups at all of these churches. But those were two cute kids. This is Brother Zapata, and this is Victor. This is Victor's wife, and I don't know her name. I failed to remember her name. Obviously, this is Josue. You'll notice I keep Josue close by me at all times, and it kind of helps me. And if Josue starts to wander, Eduardo kind of sneaks in. So I really appreciated those guys. I didn't have to ask them. They know how badly I need a translator, so they kind of stayed on top of that. But Josue is with me right here, and Brother Zapata and Victor are the two men that do most of the preaching. Well, they do all the preaching, and they are engaged in the work quite well. And I've had several conversations with them during this period of time. We were there for a couple of hours, and so I got to talk to them about what they were doing. And again, there are a lot of people in San Jose, a lot of people in Alajuelita. So they are trying to reach people, again, with the gospel just as much as they can. But they have great personalities. I mean, I could tell by my conversations with them and by the things that I'd said even in the lesson and by their reaction to some of those things, they were challenging my thinking with what about this passage and what about this passage. And I appreciated that very much because you could tell they were engaged obviously in what we were trying to do. This is a picture of Zapata's wife, and that's their daughter. Of course, that's Jenny. But one thing that I'm going to say about Jenny, among other things that she was able to help me with, she just walked into the room, wherever we were, she walked in the room and went about, she just did whatever she wanted to do. But she gathered people and garnered people, got them together pretty quickly, and could communicate a little bit with them. She's taken 4 years of Spanish, and she certainly doesn't speak the language, but she was so good about doing some other things while I was doing what it was that I thought I needed to do. And so at the end, back to the hotel, and she'd share some things with me that she found out and some people that she had met, and it just meant a lot to me personally for her to be with me, but it also helped me in my work, and I appreciate her willingness to go with me as well. She just did a great job, and I really do appreciate it. She after it was over, when we were flying back to the States on Monday, she just expressed several times how much she enjoyed going, how much she appreciated going, and she just kept talking about more things that could happen and more things that we could do and other ways to reach people. And I really appreciated that about her. She was involved in what we were trying to do. It wasn't just let's go down there and see the people. It was let's go down there and talk to them about the gospel and about things that are really important. So that was it. I had her take this picture, and to me, this is kind of a picture for me. But when I go down there, just like here, when you see people without the gospel, it just causes you to want to say, whatever I can do, however I can help, if there's a way I can help. And I will tell you that you don't always know the best way to do that. I think I mentioned in one of the first slides that I had up here that understanding how much progress you're making or not making is a hard thing to do. It's hard to measure progress. Let me give you an idea about that. It's hard to measure progress here. How do you measure progress in a local church? How do we measure progress here? Do we measure progress by how many we baptize? Do we measure progress by how many visitors we have? Do we measure progress by how much more we know? How do we measure progress here spiritually? That's not an easy question to answer. It's not an easy question to answer there. But the way I think to go about it there is the same way we go about it here. We put our hand to the task. We have a vision about what it is that we want to try to accomplish, and we try to do that. And every time I go, and as I said, this being my 8th trip, I have at least in my mind, I have a greater vision. Not greater in terms of more time has to be spent, but a greater vision in terms of how I can best help them. And when I say that, I don't want that to come across as, well, what's Kenny doing? I want it to come across as, here's just one person who has gone down now for some time and has built a relationship with these people whom you have seen. And now when I communicate with Santiago either by email, we Skype about 2 or 3 times a month, because as long as Josue's there, we can communicate through Skype. But I've now built a relationship so that I feel like they trust me, I trust them. We are able to accomplish a lot of wonderful things together just in terms of talking about some things that we want to do. So this means a lot to me. This picture again, I had Jenny take this picture because it just kind of is on my heart. Because it's a place where I feel like I can do some good because of the relationships that I've built, again, with these people. This was in Alajuelita. I just took this picture of Josue and Eduardo because they mean so much to me. Of course, without those guys, I mean, I could find other translators, but these guys are young, they have energy, they don't get tired. And what I like about it, they know what we're trying to do. And so if Josue is translating for me, if I'm talking to someone or a group of people and he's translating for me, Eduardo will be off to the side with another group just asking questions and talking to them and seeing if there's something that they want to ask me or something a way that I can help them. And he'll come back to me and he'll say, come over here. So they're not only are they just translating what I'm saying or translating to me what others are saying, they're involved in what we're trying to accomplish. And these guys are 21 years old. They're both, Josue is studying, he's doing some special things in computers. One of the things Eduardo's doing is he's taking care of his brother. His mother works for Subway, and not the Subway, works for the Subway sandwich shop. And in Costa Rica, she's about the 3rd highest in Subway there. But because his mother and his father both work, he has a 5-year-old brother that he has to take care of. But he and I talk about next year when his brother goes to kindergarten, maybe some things that Eduardo wants to do with his life as well. But I value these boys, and they're not really boys, they're young men. And not only do they, are their age that they're young men, but their attitude. And every time I talk to them, I just feel closer to them, and I think they me. So that's been a very good relationship. This was after we got back from Alajuelita. This was at the hotel. They were dropping us off later that afternoon and going home. We just kind of had a picture taken with everybody there. But again, that group of people has come to mean a great deal to me. And I know to you, that's a group of people, and I know you love them because I love them. But again, in time, I hope that maybe some things that can happen where you'll get to meet these people as well.